Hey everybody, you ready for a deep dive? We're going underground today, literally. Well, not literally, but we're diving into this paper on the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis.
hmm
And this one says the answer to the UAP thing might not be up in space, but like right here under our noses.
It's definitely a fascinating idea. Most of the research out there is about, extraterrestrials and where UAPs come from. But this paper wants us to think about something else entirely. What if it's not aliens, but something already here on Earth that we just haven't found yet?
So not little green men from across the galaxy, but something else entirely, maybe even something that was here before us.
That's the core of it, yeah. The paper talks about how more and more people are interested in UAPs, especially since the military released all that footage.
Hmm.
And yeah, a lot of those sightings can be explained, but there's still those ones that we just can't explain. And that's what makes these other theories so interesting.
And that's where this whole ultra-terrestrial idea comes in, right?
Right, ultra-terrestrial is a pretty broad term. What it means is that whatever intelligence is behind UAPs, it's not coming from light years away. It's already here, just hidden from us. It could be interdimensional beings or beings that exist outside of space and time as we know it. There are some researchers like Masters and Puthoff who have done a lot of work on these ideas.
It really makes you think about things differently. Instead of looking up to the stars for answers, maybe we should be looking down or even under our feet.
In a way, yeah. The crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, they call it CTH, basically says this non-human intelligence could be hiding underground or even underwater. It's statistically unlikely, but this paper argues that some recent observations, especially of underwater UAPs, make it seem just a little bit more possible.
Underwater UAPs, or USOs as they're calling them. This is where it gets really interesting. We've all heard about weird lights in the sky, but something strange down in the ocean. That just adds a whole other layer to the mystery.
It does, and it's a part of our planet that we've barely explored. Some reports of USOs describe things that seem impossible, like speeds faster than any technology we have, the ability to move between air and water seamlessly, and even what some people call transmedium travel, basically moving through solid matter as if it wasn't there.
Like that incident with the New Zealand frigate back in 1987. They said it was a huge USO, hundreds of feet long, and it was going over 2,000 miles per hour.
Exactly. And then there's the Tic Tac incident where those Navy pilots saw a UAP that seemed to disappear into the water like it was docking with something down there. These are just stories, of course, but they definitely raise some big questions.
It makes you wonder, if there is something down there, what else are we missing? Could there be a connection between these USOs and those stories about lost civilizations? I mean, either human or otherwise.
The paper definitely explores that possibility. Our understanding of history is always changing. We're always finding new things that challenge what we thought we knew about the past.
Like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Yeah.
That completely changed how we thought about early civilizations.
Absolutely. Göbekli Tepe is almost 12,000 years old, which is even older than Stonehenge. And then there's that structure they found in Lake Michigan that looks like Stonehenge. They think that one's at least 10,000 years old. These discoveries show us just how big and old our planet is and how much we still don't know.
So you're saying it's possible that there was a technologically advanced civilization here on Earth way before our recorded history even started, and that maybe something happened that forced them underground.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? We haven't found any hard evidence of a civilization like that, but there are a few artifacts that make us wonder if maybe our timeline for technology is all wrong.
Like that Antikythera mechanism. It's basically an ancient Greek computer. It's unbelievably complex and thousands of years ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Or the Baghdad battery, which some people think was actually an ancient battery.
Mhm.
And then there's the chess disk from Egypt. It's got this design that looks way too modern for how old it is.
Right. And it's important to remember that there are probably normal explanations for a lot of these objects,
Okay.
but they do make us realize that we shouldn't underestimate how clever people were in the past.
Good point. Even if we just forget about the idea of ancient humans going underground for a second, there's still a big question. Is it even possible to live underground for that long? Could anything actually survive down there?
That's where things get even more interesting. We haven't found a whole hidden world under our feet or anything, but life is amazingly adaptable. It can survive in some really crazy places.
Just look at the city of Derinkuyu in Turkey. It's a whole city underground with ventilation shafts, places to live, even stables for animals. It shows what humans can do when they need to find a safe place to live.
Yeah, and there are other examples too. We've found whole ecosystems deep down in the ocean, around those volcanic vents, even miles below the surface. Life finds a way even without any sunlight, even with all that pressure.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it, how life can just keep going. Scientists call them extremophiles, these organisms that can live in conditions that would kill most other things. It really makes you wonder what else is out there.
It does, doesn't it? And it makes you think about all those old stories and myths about people and creatures living underground. Maybe there's something to them after all.
So you're talking about actual civilizations living underground, not just life in general.
Exactly. This paper I was telling you about, it talks about how common these stories are in cultures all over the world, going back thousands of years, like the Hebrew Shield, the Tibetan Shambhala, the Nagas, and Hindu and Buddhist traditions. They all talk about these underground worlds where beings with special knowledge or powers live.
And it's not just ancient myths either. People are still having these experiences today.
That's right. There are places like Mount Shasta in the U.S., Dulce Base in New Mexico, the Puerto Rico Trench. They all have stories about strange things happening and people seeing strange creatures.
Mount Shasta always seemed interesting to me. It's like a hotspot for UFO sightings, and then there are those stories about a secret city under the mountain called Pelos, where they say this really advanced race lives.
I know. Some people might think those stories are crazy, but it is interesting how they've stuck around, even now when we're supposed to be so scientific. It makes you think that maybe deep down humans need to believe in something bigger than themselves, something out there that we don't understand.
Maybe it's more than just needing to believe. Maybe it's like some kind of instinct we have.
That's a really interesting thought. And speaking of interesting, did I tell you this paper also talks about how some of those old stories about fairies and stuff are kind of similar to what people are saying about UFOs today?
Fairies? Wait, are we really talking about fairies now?
Not like Tinkerbell or anything like that, but think about it. A lot of the things people used to say about fairies, how they could appear and disappear, the strange lights and sounds they made, the fact that they seemed so otherworldly, it's all pretty similar to what people are saying about UFOs today.
Okay, so what are we saying here? That fairies are aliens or something, or time travelers? What?
That's a $1 million question, isn't it? This researcher, Jacques Vallée, he wrote a book called Passport to Magonia, and he talks about how a lot of these old stories about fairies and other supernatural beings could actually be describing encounters with what we now call UFOs. He says maybe what we see as advanced technology now looked like magic or something supernatural to people back then.
It's a pretty wild idea when you think about it. But even if there is a connection there, doesn't that still mean that this whole crypto-terrestrial hypothesis is kind of a long shot?
Well, yeah, it's still just a hypothesis.
Right.
And the paper even says that statistically it's not very likely. But it also says that we shouldn't just dismiss it completely.
Yeah.
We have to be open to all the possibilities, no matter how strange they seem.
I guess the more we learn about the universe, the more we realize how much we don't know.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying UFOs so interesting, especially this crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. It makes us rethink everything we thought we knew and confront the limits of our own knowledge.
So how does this paper break down the different types of crypto-terrestrial hypotheses?
Well, they talk about 4 main variations. They all revolve around the idea of a non-human intelligence living here on Earth in secret. But they each have a different take on what these beings might be. For example, CTH1 says that crypto-terrestrials are descended from an ancient human civilization that was forced to go underground by some kind of disaster, like maybe a huge flood or something.
So basically our long-lost relatives who had to go into hiding. What about the other variations?
CTH2 is pretty similar, except instead of being regularly Homo sapiens, it says these ancient humans were a different species of human that we haven't discovered yet.
So that's 2 down, 2 to go. Both about ancient humans. What are the other 2? What are they saying?
Well, CTH3 says that it's not humans at all, but a totally different species that's always been here, maybe even before humans.
Another intelligent species just living right here under our noses. That's a pretty wild thought.
It definitely makes you think about what else we might have missed. And then you've got CTH4, which is probably the most out there idea of them all. It says that the intelligence behind UAPs could be something the paper calls ontologically distinct. Basically, they're saying these things exist outside of our reality, like fairies or elves or something.
Whoa, okay, that's a big jump from lost humans to, like, beings from another dimension. What makes them even think about that?
They're basically saying that some of these UAP encounters are so strange, so far outside of what we understand about physics, that we have to consider every possibility, even the really weird ones. They think maybe we need to rethink what we even mean by life and intelligence if we want to understand this stuff.
So we've got these 4 different flavors of CTH. It's like a spectrum or something. CTH1 and 2 are all about lost human civilizations, maybe even our own ancestors. CTH3 says there's another intelligent species right here on Earth with us. And CTH4 says it could be beings from beyond our reality.
Exactly, and each one has its own set of questions. Like, If CTH1 or 2 is right, and there are these hidden human civilizations out there, why haven't they made contact? Why stay hidden, especially if they have such advanced technology? It's a real head-scratcher.
For sure. And what about CTH3? If there's another intelligent species here on Earth besides us, shouldn't there be some kind of evidence? Even if it's just circumstantial.
Well, the paper mentions those stories about reptilian beings and people seeing creatures that don't match any known species. Plus, there are all those rumors about the government covering up evidence of aliens and maybe even having recovered alien bodies or something.
That's getting into some pretty out there territory, don't you think? Sounds kind of conspiratorial.
It does. And the paper does say that a lot of the evidence for CTH3 is based on rumors and stories that haven't been verified. It's important to be able to separate what we know for sure from what people are just saying.
Right, okay, so that brings us to CTH4, the one that's the most out there. You're telling me that fairies could be the intelligence behind UFOs.
I know it sounds crazy, right? CTH4 is definitely a tough one to swallow, especially if you don't believe in anything beyond the material world. But the paper argues that if UAPs really are breaking the laws of physics as we know them, then maybe these things aren't bound by the same rules that we are. Maybe there's something completely different.
So you're saying we might be talking about a whole other dimension of reality? And that somehow these things can cross over into our world?
That's the gist of CTH4. It's forcing us to expand our definition of what's real and to accept that there might be forces out there that we're only just starting to understand.
It's both amazing and kind of terrifying when you think about it. It makes you realize just how much we don't know. So where do we even begin? If we're taking this crypto-terrestrial hypothesis seriously, how do we even start to look for answers?
That's the big question, right? The paper suggests a multidisciplinary approach, meaning it's not just about astronomers and physicists anymore. They're saying we need anthropologists, archaeologists, geologists, even people who study folklore. We need to look at this from every angle and be open to all kinds of evidence.
So basically we need a whole new way of doing science. One that's not afraid to look at the things that scare us a little bit.
Yeah.
The things we don't understand.
Exactly. We have to be willing to question everything we think we know and be open to the possibility that we're wrong.
Well, I'll tell you what, after this deep dive, I don't think I'll ever look at the world the same way again. It's humbling and exciting all at the same time to think about what might be out there. Or maybe what's been here all along.
That's the beauty of exploring the unknown. It makes us rethink our place in the universe and realize that we might just be scratching the surface of what's really out there.
You got that right. So for everyone listening, keep your minds open and never stop asking questions. What if the answers we're looking for aren't up in the stars or right here, hidden in plain sight?